In the new first season of Doctor Who, Ncuti Gatwa's 15th Doctor had a lot that distinguished him as unique for his incarnation, whether that be fashion, the multiple outfits that he wore, whether or not that be his lively, bubbly personality, or one of the potentially the most controversial aspects of his new persona, the crying. Now, in one way or another, Ncuti Gatwa cried in almost every single episode of the season, and I've sort of seen two camps on this, two extreme camps on this online, and I wanted to talk about them. There is the camp that says the Doctor shouldn't cry, the Doctor should be strong, and we shouldn't see him break down so much in tears. And then there's the other camp which says, no, get the Doctor crying as much as possible because it shows a positive side to a positive aspect of masculinity where you can show your feelings. And I want to talk about why both of those extreme viewpoints are wrong. Hello, welcome to Culture Filter. I am the Phil in Filter, and we're going to be talking about the Doctor crying a lot in Season 1 of Doctor Who. Now, I am sure I'm going to piss off the majority of people in this video because, like I said, there seems to be two extreme viewpoints on this that at least the loudest viewpoints. I'm sure there are a lot more people as well that potentially share my viewpoint, but maybe aren't as vocal about it. But the vocal people seem to be on one of those two camps that either the Doctor shouldn't cry, it's terrible to see the Doctor cry, don't cry, or the Doctor should cry all the time because, you know, it's good to show human emotions and it's good to show men crying and that's okay. And I don't disagree with that, but here's why I don't think it quite works in the way they used it in this season. But equally, I definitely don't think he should never cry. So let's recap. When did he cry throughout this season? Let's actually start a little bit before this technical season with the Christmas special, The Church on Ruby Road. He cries when he goes back to the church, when Ruby has been wiped from history by the goblins going back to steal her as a baby, and he's obviously quite upset about that. Then there's the space babies, where the bogeyman is almost killed by Nanny sort of pushing it out into space, and the Doctor's watching through the glass. He's upset about that. He's empathizing that this creature is the only one of its kind, much like him, and about to be killed. So that's very sad. Then in the Devil's Cord, when he's scared and running and hiding from Maestro, he realizes the connection to the Giggle and the fact that Maestro is another one of these other universe creatures, all-powerful creatures, and he's scared about that and doesn't think they might be able to defeat another one of them, that they got lucky with the Giggle and that luck isn't going to be there again, so he's very scared, and the tears in that scene come from a sort of emotional point of being scared. There's also some crying during the music battle. Obviously it's very tense, high emotions. Ruby's been captured at one point. There's a lot going on. He's trapped in a drum. There's a lot going on there, and at one point in that battle, I can't remember the exact point, there are some more tears there as well. In Boom, there are many occasions where a tear goes down his cheek in Boom, and in my view, this is probably one of the most justifiable aspects of the crying in this episode, even how much it happens. When he's trying to do the counterweight from his foot, we also get when the girl almost makes the bomb go off by falling on it, so there's another few tears there. Throughout the scene where Mundy first confronts them, there are more tears. When Ruby is shot, and when he's thinking that he's about to blow up half the planet as well. There are tears in that bit as well. So quite a lot of tears in Boom. 73 Yards, the one episode with absolutely no crying because there is barely any Doctor in it. He's in at the very beginning, he's in at the very end. There aren't any situations where he would cry. So yeah, no crying from the Doctor in 73 Yards. Then we get Dot and Bubble, the very powerful end scene there where he's confronting the racist society and how they won't let him help them because of the colour of his skin, because they don't want to be contaminated, their words, by him. So there's that outburst there, there's that crying mixed with laughter, and there are tears rolling down his cheeks there because they won't let him help them. That was a very powerful scene. Then there's a few instances in Rogue where there are tears. Thinks Ruby's been killed by the bird creatures, I forget their name. Then when he realises his mistake in trapping Ruby, and then when Rogue sacrifices himself in place of Ruby as well. The Legend of Ruby Sunday. Now, in my memory, there was more crying in this, but when I skipped back through, I actually struggled to find some, and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought maybe the bit where he gets a bit angry and punches the elevator shaft door thing, that there were tears there, I think. I didn't spot anything else, but let me know if I missed anything in that episode. Then in Empire of Death, we've got another episode with multiple instances when he's looking out at a destroyed universe from the TARDIS and breaks down crying as he looks out. When he's in the tent with the woman and the woman realizes that her baby is actually already dead, that moment there's a tear that goes down. After killing Sutekh, he slouches on the floor behind the closed doors of the TARDIS and tears again. And finally, when Ruby decides to leave and not travel with him in that particular instance after she's left, there are tears going down his cheek again. So those are the instances. Now I want to talk about why I don't think he should have cried as much. I don't think he shouldn't have cried at all. I just think it happened too often to maintain the effect on the audience. What I've been comparing this to is the 10th Doctor and his repeated line that he often used of, "I'm sorry. I am so sorry." Because the first few times he does that, you feel it, and you feel the pain that the Doctor is feeling. But the problem is, throughout his era, throughout the 10th Doctor's era, he said it again and again in exactly the same way, at the exact same pained look on his face, and eventually kind of got to the point where like, oh yeah, he's doing the line again. Yeah, no, the effect has gone for the audience. And I think that's what happened with Ncuti's crying as well. Crying on screen is a very powerful tool to evoke emotions in your audience, to evoke a reaction from your audience. And therefore, you need to pick where you're going to use it, because if you use it too often, you sort of your audience becomes immune to it, and it doesn't have the same effect. Now, to address the people that have the argument that, hey, it's great that we can show men crying and that side of masculinity and men expressing their emotions, I agree with all of that. And the majority of the instances where he cries in this scene are instances I can absolutely see myself crying in. They are absolutely legitimate reasons to cry. That isn't the issue with it. The issue is you have to make a choice. Yes, you can choose that, hey, we're going to do this and the purpose of it is to legitimize, crying, to normalize men crying. And that is a perfectly reasonable stance to take. That is a perfectly reasonable aim to have. However, this is also a TV drama, and the way the scenes are filmed with the music that they pair with these moments kind of indicates to me that actually what they're doing is they want us to have a reaction to it. And I don't think you can have both of those things. You can either normalize the fact that people cry a lot, and they do, and that is fine, but you can't do that to the extent they have been doing it while also maintaining the emotional effect it will have on an audience. Because, like I said, the more you see something, a particular person do a repeated thing, the less impact it has. Like the 10th Doctor saying, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." So while that is a legitimate choice, you could have had him crying more. If they'd done it without all of the, the grandioseness of the scenes that they were involved in, the swelling music and all those sort of things, I would have believed that that was their aim. I don't think so. I think their aim was still to evoke an emotional reaction in us. And if you still had that emotional reaction by the end of the last episode every time he cried, great. But for me, it lessened it. Moments where it would have had an emotional impact, it had less towards the end of the season than it would have done if he had cried less throughout the season. So yes, you may, as a person, cry on all of these instances if you were in them in real life. But this isn't real life, this is a drama, and you crying is for your own personal, in those instances, is for your own personal therapy, expelling of emotions, but it's for very personal reasons. Whereas in a drama, the reason anything happens on screen is to evoke something in the audience, either an emotion or to get information across or something. And so you crying is your own reason. In a TV drama, it's to have an effect on the audience. You are not a fictional character in a story. You don't need to serve a purpose for that story. You are just living your life. So I am absolutely not saying he should not have cried at all. I am just thinking he should have maybe cried less. So when should he have cried? I think we can reduce it by at least a third, maybe even a half of the amount of times that he was crying. I think the one in Church on Ruby Road is interesting because I think it would work perfectly well without the crying in that scene. I think you could get across the pained emotion without the crying, and therefore it would have saved that emotional impact for later on in the series when Ruby was in trouble in, say, Boom and Rogue. But I get that it could be there to kind of set up in that first episode that this is a doctor that would cry, so I'm iffy on that one. I would put that one in a maybe keep it, maybe don't category. Then I would not have any crying at all in Space Babies or The Devil's Cord. I forgot what the episode was then. Or The Devil's Cord. So I think all of that tension, all of those things in those scenes, while they are fine, they're not necessarily needed. And therefore, once again, I think save the impact for later on in the season, I think. So I think you can do and evoke everything you evoke in the audience with those scenes without the crying. So then we get to Boom, and I think absolutely there's a lot of them in this, but I think keep it, because this episode thrives on the fact that the Doctor is out of his comfort zone. He is experiencing tension like he doesn't usually experience it, and all of that crying really works in this episode. So absolutely keep all of it in Boom. Dot and Bubble, similarly, that bit at the end is so powerful, and the crying is a big part of that. Even though it's back to back with Boom, I would absolutely... No, it's not back to back with Boom, is it? There's 73 yards in between. So it's not even the problem of being back to back. I would absolutely keep this as is in Dot and Bubble. Rogue's an interesting one because it happens sort of 3 times in quite quick succession. I think you can maybe build up to it a bit more. I think don't have the crying when he initially thinks that Ruby's dead. Keep that as the kind of slightly vengeful anger emotion only. Then maybe you could get away with 2 there, I think, maybe, or maybe just 1. I don't know. Maybe pick, and I don't mind which, but whether or not it's when he realises that Ruby is actually alive and he's trapped her, or when Rogue sacrifices himself for Ruby. Maybe that one would be the better one, because we've already had in Boom some, evoking of emotion when she gets shot, so that's kind of replaying the same thing there. So something a bit different with Rogue would be interesting, so keep that just 1 instance out of that episode. Then I wouldn't have any crying until Empire of Death, and I would have that at the looking out on the destroyed universe bit at the beginning, and I would cut the rest of the crying in that episode. While the scene in the tent with the lady was absolutely very powerful and emotional, and I definitely cried while watching it, I don't think the Doctor crying is needed in that scene in order to evoke that reaction. I think just the situation and the lady's reaction is enough to evoke that in the audience, and I think the Doctor can get across his empathy and sadness in that moment without needing to cry. So I think that's about half the amount of crying that there originally was. So I think that would have worked a lot better, because it would have saved the more powerful moments for the end and maintained their powerfulness without diluting them by having it too often throughout the series. Now, like I say, none of this is to do with the Doctor shouldn't cry. I don't agree with that at all. The Doctor should, and has many times in the past, cried, and I think that's absolutely spot on. He just needs to not do it every single episode, and as frequently, for it to maintain its power on us, the audience. That was a bit of a rambly thing, but it's been something that's been playing on my mind this season, so I want to know what you think. Do you think the Doctor cries too much? If so, is it the same reasons as me? Do you not mind him crying a bit, but just think the impact is less, or do you have a different view on it? And if you are very much I like him crying every episode, please do put your thoughts in the comments down below. I would love to hear what you think about this, and please try and explain to me a bit better why that's important to you. Thanks for watching. I will be back for more Doctor Who videos soon. I will see you soon. Goodbye.